Hi, I'm Ella.
Hi, I'm Meg.
Hi, I'm Frannie.
Hi, I'm Lucy.
Hiya, I'm Poppy.
Hi, I'm Alex.
Hi, I'm James.
I am Sarah.
And today we're going to be talking about emotionally abusive relationships, and that's romantic relationships, because obviously that's something that can affect people in a family sense or in friendships, but today we're going to be focusing on romantic relationships and emotional abuse rather than physical abuse, but hopefully this will be helpful for people. So yeah, I think a lot of people tend to associate the word abuse with physical abuse, and that's why it's quite a hard thing to recognise. If you're experiencing emotional abuse, you might not really notice that that's happening to you. I don't think there's that much representation for that. I don't think it's widely talked about enough. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some of the signs. So obviously there's a lot more than this, but just like a few that I've written down is gaslighting. So saying like, oh, calm down, you're being paranoid. Like if someone is saying something they like know is true and being told that's not true or that they're wrong, that kind of thing. And then as well, like name calling, being gradually, subtly put down, or then like laughing off as a joke, being like, oh, come on, take a joke, that kind of thing. Cutting you off or giving you bad ideas about your friends and family and trying to maybe like make that a bit of a joke between the two of you to make the two of you closer. I think that is a really important one to discuss, because a lot of the time if you hear the phrase like, oh, they cut you off from your friends, you would imagine someone being like, don't see your friends anymore, you're not allowed. And that's, that's quite an obvious thing to spot, and you would think, okay, I would definitely be able to spot that. But I think in reality it's a lot more subtle than that, and it maybe more giving you bad ideas about your friend, even just being like, maybe if they realise that person might be onto them and maybe would be giving you the idea that you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, they'd be trying to cut you off from that person and that kind of thing. And then as well, cheating, which I think is quite an obvious one, but and then being sort of hot and cold, which is like, so they'll either be really, really loving to you and really kind to you and give you really positive associations with them, and then suddenly and unexpectedly being horrible to you, which I think is quite an important way for abusers to sort of keep their partner with them, because then it gets the abused person sort of an addiction to the highs and the lows, and like it becomes a bit like a drug. And it makes you think, even when they are being horrible to you, you sort of think, okay, but if I remember back to yesterday when they were being really, really lovely to me and telling me how much they love me and stuff, like, surely they can't mean this. It's quite psychological. And then, yeah, I think another thing, comparing you to other people constantly, saying how they wish you were like that, or trying to make you feel bad about yourself. And then another one is using silence as like a punishment to make you beg for attention or say sorry. And then a more sort of scary one would be threatening behaviours at the idea of you leaving them. So either that could be literally threatening to kill you or kill themselves, or even in just a more subtle sense, just maybe if you have mutual friends, the idea of them threatening to take your friends away, or friends being involved is or children obviously as well. Children being involved is even more of a threat, I guess. But yeah, so that's quite an important one, because I think a lot of people say, oh, why don't you leave if you're in an abusive relationship? Why wouldn't you leave? But it's so hard. I think especially the statistics show for women, the most dangerous time in a woman's life is when she leaves a relationship. So even if that wasn't previously seen as abusive or anything, that is still a big threat to her life. And every 3 days, a woman is killed by a man.
I don't have any to add really, but like I think it's important to kind of mention that and not like excusing emotional abuse at all, because it is so damaging, but like I feel like you can be an emotional abuser yourself very easily in your relationship, because it comes with a certain level of insecurity as well, and trust issues. It isn't always like coming from this like serial killer type of like really like smart evil person. It can also just come in the forms of just a really, really weak person.
I think some of the examples that you use, like I don't know, you can see how someone does those things without realizing, or has sort of taught themselves that that's normal for them to do, and that like maybe part of fixing that issue is sort of helping kind of raise awareness to just how kind of influential we can be in our behaviours towards people that are involved and like us. Yeah, I think it definitely is capable of like being, oh wait, maybe I am being a bit like manipulative or controlling. And, it's definitely something that you're capable of doing without being like an evil person, I think.
Definitely. Well, that's something as well that I wanted to raise awareness, not just for people who might not realize that they are being abused, but for people who might not realize that they are being abusive, because I think that's such an important thing, because a lot of those things, like you both said, is stuff that, especially individually, maybe not all of them together, but a lot of those individual things are things that people might do in relationships because they have anxiety or because they have themselves been abused in the past. I think a lot of those behaviors are seen later in people who have been victims of abuse themselves, because maybe they think that's just how relationships should go, or they're left feeling insecure or paranoid. I think it's really important, like you both said, a lot of the time the problem is that the abusers don't realize that that's what they're being, and if you told someone you are abusive, that might really shock them, and they would check in on their behaviors then. And yeah, of course there's people who do know full well they're being abusive and do that on purpose and enjoy that.
So basically, Ella asked me to give some insights into a couple of different issues. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about issues concerning men as victims of abuse, and also give some perspective on how, if you are in a relationship with someone perhaps who has previously suffered from abuse, you can actually help their recovery and ensure that you can sustain, a sense of happiness, understanding and respect in your current relationship, which I think is really important. So when I was looking at sort of statistics to do with men as victims of abuse, I think something that really stood out to me was that in 2017 and 2018, nearly half of male victims actually failed to tell anyone that they were victims of abuse. When they had actually recognised that they were being abused, they still were silent about it and kept it to themselves. So yeah, there's a large majority of men who are suffering in silence. I was going to give some reasons as to why this might be. For example, the first one is that men may actually feel ashamed that they are being abused and that they are unable to stand up for themselves, or have even failed in their role as a male, which obviously that in itself is just very problematic mindset to have, and that needs to be addressed in itself. But that can be a really big reason why men stay silent. Men may also worry that they'll have difficulty being believed by authorities, or that their abuse will be minimized because of a lack of resources. I think that there is a lot of emphasis on females as victims of abuse. Men may be in a sense of denial, just as women may be in a sense of denial that they are actually suffering from abuse. If you love your partner, if you believe that your partner can change, or you believe that you can help partner to stop treating you the way that they're treating you, then it can be extremely difficult to be honest about what is happening to you. And if you think as well, like Ella said in the beginning, when children come into the equation, because this happens through all stages of life, when children come into the equation, it just makes that situation so much more harder to assess. Your thoughts at that point extend then beyond yourself, and you have to think about the people who depend on you, which is just makes the situation so much more difficult, especially within like marriages and things like that. So, in my experience, I know many people who have stayed in abusive relationships, both men and women, because of the reasons that I've just given there. And it's just so difficult to comprehend the individual circumstances when it comes to abuse. That's why we're here today, to help people recognise the forms of abuse that there are, just besides just physical.
I feel like just like a lot of the kind of causes of abusive like relationships is well, not like the main cause, but it's definitely perpetuated by, you know, films and stuff. I feel like a lot of like romantic movies that I mean, the Twilight Saga, I was obsessed with that when I was a kid, and 50 Shades of Grey and things like that. You know, everything in that is obvious how abusive it is, but it's because, oh, they're attractive or they have money. It's deemed as okay or acceptable. But I know that definitely as you grow up as a girl, I think that there's just kind of this like mentality that you have to fix men, and like that, you know, men are broken. It comes from like so many things in our world that just need to be changed, because yeah, I definitely have looked at those kind of movies and thought that that's what romance is.
Pretty much every romantic film has like weird manipulation and abuse, like things that are considered grand gestures and stuff are actually just really creepy, like Edward fucking watching Bella sleep.
Well, the thing is, he's actually like 118 as well, which is like, that's just a whole
that whole thing is so weird. And like you said as well about women are quite like are taught to sort of fix men. I think that's a really important topic to focus on as well, is that is really within our society something that's really ingrained in us from a young age, is the idea of like tolerating shit to sort of make men better, and like being considered sort of a learning curve on a man's journey to being a better person. And I think that's just so frustrating, because you're so often told like, oh, well, you know, like forgive him, he's a better person now. But like, what about the woman who's been left like traumatized by his actions? You know, yes, of course, we need to like forgive people, and if people are becoming better, that is what we want, and that is a good thing. But I don't think anyone's ever owed forgiveness if they have left someone in that kind of state. Like
the same for the other way around.
Yeah, I agree. I think
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
No, it's definitely the same both way around, but like just throughout like what we've seen is growing up, it's definitely like more so pushed on women.
I think on the whole topic of like growing up and being told certain things as well, I think we're told that, you know, you're toxic in a relationship because you care, so you'll shout because you care, and you're jealous because you'll care, but that's not the case at all. It shouldn't have to be that, which is quite upsetting, and that guys kind of want a girl to act a bit crazy and jealous because, you know, it's that's what love is, but it's not.
Okay. So the second bit of what I was just going to talk about was what it's like to be in a relationship with someone who has suffered from abuse in the past, and what you can actually do to help the person in order to have, you know, a happy, mutually successful relationship. So when it comes to victims of abuse being able to start a new relationship, and that relationship now involving you, I think there are a lot of like not responsibilities as such, but definitely things to keep in mind and things that can be done to help your partner with either adapting to a healthier relationship environment or providing comfort and assurance for them. So mental abuse can cause someone to doubt themselves, question their worth, lose self-esteem. And so there's definitely verbal and physical aids that can help the healing process, if that's obviously hopefully what you want for your partner. I would hope so. And the post was about the most beautiful things that you can tell someone who's been mentally abused. And I thought I would just share a few of the things they said, because I just thought that they were really nice, and I think that they're really important to hear. So the first one is, their behaviour is a reflection of their toxicity, not who you are. Please don't ever doubt what you mean to me. I value you so much, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life. You are worthy of so much more than your mind is telling you. I see and appreciate the real you. You don't need to filter yourself around me. If you need time and space to talk about what you went through, please know I'm here for you. You've gone through a lot, and it's okay not to be okay. So I just thought that those were some really nice things that you can say to your partner. I think that that's just, you know, really important. It's just so important to be patient and loving and to communicate with your partner, because I definitely think that those are things that aren't present in an abusive relationship. You need to show your partner that you aren't going to be treating them the same way, basically, and so those things are really vital. But I think it's also important to highlight that it's really important to help your partner recognize when they're actually reflecting some toxic and abusive traits that perhaps they've taken from the previous relationship. And again, this needs to be equally done with respect and patience. And even I think the intervention of professional guidance is really, really important for people to know that they can reach out to professionals. And I think that is actually something that they definitely should do. Putting too much strain on yourself to try and solve your partner's problems and struggles can be really damaging to a relationship in itself. But I think Lucy's going to go on to explain some bits about that later on.
Like, what do you think are the most important things in a healthy relationship? I would say if you're able to communicate clearly and kindly, if you trust them, and if you feel able to be like safe and vulnerable, like you feel safe to be vulnerable with them, I think those are some of the most important things. What else do you think?
Very good summary.
Thanks.
I think trust and communication.
Oh
yeah, I think communication is the big one. Yeah,
Those are fun.
Hey Rachel. I don't know. Yeah, definitely trust and communication. I think obviously there's a lot of things you could say, and there's a lot of other things you need as well. But those are the two sort of core things.
I just think as well, like knowing, I think understanding what you want from a relationship is really important. Excluding like the media and what the media portray of relationships, I think excluding that, it's really important to understand what you want from a healthy relationship, and to make sure that you are letting your partner know, this comes under communication, that you are letting your partner know that they aren't treating you how you want to be treated, and just that awareness, just making sure that you keep each other in the loop with the standard of behavior that's going on in the relationship. You're not going to be perfect, obviously, but you can pick up things that you need to be able to recognize, which is why I think that this video is obviously an important tool. Really small things, just like, you know, if your partner isn't doing something that you want them to be doing in the relationship, and you use emotional manipulation to, you know, to make them aware that you're upset about something, rather than just saying, look, this isn't working and you're actually really upsetting me, that is abusive. And that may not seem abusive, but it definitely is. So yeah, just making sure there's constant awareness of how each other's behaving, and always like just checking in, like doing constant check-ins with each other. So yeah, communication is just key, really.
I think like also just remembering that you are both individuals, like going to the gym together, like certain things. There's a lot of things. Yeah, you should just always remember who you are, not change your likes and your beliefs as well, and morals for the other person.
Also being open-minded to maybe what you want out of the other person is maybe unreasonable, or maybe that the insecurities that you have, you need to make sure they can't always like account for that. You have to respect the fact that like they're not responsible for your own like worries, and like sometimes just like a bit of like self-awareness, like maybe I am asking too much, and that person isn't horrible, they're just my age and we're young, and we're struggling to work this stuff out. And yeah, sort of just analysing yourself maybe a bit as well as the other person.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk about, obviously Poppy's mentioned about when you're in a relationship, but I kind of wanted to talk about being the friend on the outside. I think that's such an important thing. Like, I've had friends who I've watched their sort of mental health deteriorate after being in a relationship with someone who's really not good for them. But it's hard when you're obviously, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and like things to notice and things to see, and at what point do you intervene? Like, I've had a friend where this relationship she was in was kind of going south, and I kept trying to say to her, look, like, I can see all these things that you are not seeing, but you also, it's like it's a fine balance between like lecturing somebody about how wrong it is, when, like you said, Ella, earlier, about like they have so much love from that person but also so much like negativity, it's hard to see both sides. And as a friend, how do you get through to somebody who is potentially afraid of leaving said relationship and stuff like that? Like, I think that's an interesting discussion to have.
About what Frannie said, that's also very true, because I had a friend in this situation, and so I used to tell her, oh, I think this relation is abusive. I think I'm seeing the problems, but then she would just say, oh, but I'm just telling you my problems. You don't see him, how he's with me. He don't see, like, it's just because I'm telling you the bad things. And so it's also the thing that we don't know what my friend used to tell me. It's like, you don't know, like, how it is when it's just the two of us. Then it's also very good. You don't know him like I do. And so that's why it's also difficult for them, the person in the relationship, to see, because like Fran said, they have so much love for that person. So it's hard to accept, this person is abusive to me, because they're like, no, we're in love. It's been 2 years. So yeah, that was an interesting point, Frannie.
Well, that's kind of what Lucy's here for, is to talk about the effect that can have on your friends, especially I think when you're, I mean, at any age at all, like if you're a fully grown adult or if you're a child, whatever. But for Lucy's experience, it was when you were like a younger teenager and didn't really know like what was going on.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm kind of going to talk about an experience that I had with two people who were both my friends at the time. This was when we were sort of like 14, 15 in year 9, year 10ish. So I went to school with both of them, and obviously like I was really close to both of them at the time, which I think makes it like, it's when you're that young, and also when you're in this situation when like both of them were my friends, it's different, because I saw like what was happening from the inside, but I still didn't really realize what was happening. I think because of the age, I think when you're young, you just like, I remember I just kind of thought like, oh, this is like, maybe even because like what people were saying earlier about like the media's portrayal of relationships and stuff, I kind of just thought like of teenage relationships, I just thought like, oh, this is just like the kind of thing that happens in teenage relationships. Like obviously like it was like sad and horrible at the time, but I kind of didn't really understand the sort of bigger picture of it. Looking back on it now, I can see some of the signs, like some of the signs we've mentioned, just how you can like spot things, which obviously it's much harder to do when you're younger. But like now we can sort of spot these things, and like hopefully this will be useful. So I remember one main thing I remember about this is that me and this friend, the girl, we used to joke about this boy having like 2 personalities, and we used to joke about him having a sort of nice personality that was really kind and loving, and a sort of more horrible personality who would ignore her for hours and be horrible and say horrible things. And I just think that's really striking, that at the time that was a sort of joke between us, like, oh, like she'd see him and she'd get back and we'd say like, oh, like which one of his personalities was he today and stuff. And it was just like kind of a joke at the time. But when you look back, that's like shocking. It's just, at the time it was sort of like 14-year-old, like, oh, funny. But like looking back, it's like the effect that had on her was like absolutely shocking, and just horrible. Like I just would always be messaging her in the evening, and like she'd always be crying about like either like really happy because he'd been lovely to her that day, or absolutely distraught because he'd been horrible. So it was just like the two complete like polar opposites. And that's like something that doesn't necessarily, that you wouldn't think like someone acting off or on would be like such a horrible like form of abuse, but it really is like the effect that can have on someone. And I think at the time, so I think maybe because there wasn't really anyone else that she felt she could talk to about this, because I think not many other people kind of understood why she was staying in the situation. And because I also knew him, I think not like I understood, but like I'd seen the times when he was nice to her. Like I had first-hand experience of that, as well as, so when she was talking about it, I knew what she was talking about. But like it got horrible, and considering this is like 13, 14, there were some really like dark times, really dark periods, where we'd just be talking all night and she'd just be telling me about how unhappy she was. And that's horrible for both people involved, because horrible that somebody's like subjected her to that kind of emotions, those kind of feelings at such a young age. But like for me as well, because being 14, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do, and you can't give good advice to someone when you're that young, because you don't know what the advice is. So I remember afternoon I got a message from her, which honestly sounded like kind of like a goodbye kind of message. And I just remember it was the most horrible, stressful night of my life, and just the fact that like I was that young, I just didn't know what to do about it. And like, I think what I would say is it's really important in that situation that you don't just rely on like that one friend, and you don't just rely on someone who's in the situation, and you need to speak to someone outside the situation and maybe get some professional help, because like your friends, like even now, like someone, if that happened, if this same situation happened to me now, like I still wouldn't be in a position to give good advice of something like that. So therapy, counselling, like it's out there, you can find the help. And it's important not to, obviously when you're in this situation, it's really, really hard to accept that like you have something that you need to talk to someone about. But it could even be like if you're a friend on the outside situation and you recognise signs of abuse like we've talked about, and you recognise that your friend in that situation, then the best thing that you can do is not try and give advice yourself, but recommend that they seek advice from somebody else, because it's not something you can really give, I don't think.
If you're a 14-year-old watching this, talk to an adult. They normally know more than you. Like if you don't have that like person, if you don't have like someone that you feel that close to at home, like people at school, teachers, like relationships are complicated even at an early age, and adults can tell you things. That's why they're adults. Even now as well. Like I think just definitely. Like you can like it's good to tell someone to seek advice, but I think you can also get advice from other people on their behalf, because not everybody is like capable of helping themselves. And so you can like ask your parents like, hey, my friend is in a tough spot right now and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. Sometimes they'll have some quite useful top tips.
Yeah, and I think as well, Lucy, what you were saying, if you're friends with both of them, then the likelihood is you're also being manipulated by that person.
Yeah, no, also, definitely.
And then it's harder for you to see an outside perspective because you're very in it, and it's hard to know what to do and hard to know what, like, and you're obviously suffering a lot yourself there with the weight of all your friends' issues, and also the manipulation of your other friend who is manipulating your other friend. And it's just quite an intense situation to be in at any age, but especially at that age you don't know, and the likelihood is your other friends didn't know either, and like it's just not something that you understand. And that's like, that, as I said, that's not just for younger children or teenagers. That's like all ages. You can be a fully grown adult and still not realize what is happening to you, and that's why it's so important to get perspective, not just rely on one person as well for that perspective, because that's not fair to them, and that's putting them in a horrible situation. Like James said, if you can go to a teacher in school, even the likelihood is they will be able to help you or offer you some kind of, or say that you need counselling, they might be able to set that up for you because that's more confidential. Like,
yeah, I think that's also why, I think it's Alex who said it, but that's why it's also very important when people are in a relationship to still keep friends. A lot of people tend, when they get into a relationship, like it's just, I saw that in high school and stuff, just the two of them, and then you lose contact with your friends, which I think it's weird when somebody in a relationship don't want their partner to have friends, because no, I just want it to be me. I think that's weird. I want my partner to have friends to see, okay, he's appreciated. And, so I just think it's also very dangerous when they just go to two of them and they go away, because that's how you can miss some signs. Then to have no one to talk to because they don't want to feel like I just come back when I have a problem. And that's how it also can start. That's also what they just like isolate the person so that they can have all the burden. And it's like, well, if you leave me, you have nobody else. You're alone. You can't leave me anymore because you don't have any friends anymore. So that's why it's very important for me to always keep your friends, keep people around you, and not just rely on one person and make it like your whole life.
kind of off the back of that, like mentioning how Ella said earlier about a lot of the time the most difficult part of being in an emotionally abusive relationship is getting out of it. And if it's been to the point where you have no one, that first step to leave somebody and feel like you have no one on the other side can often be the scariest part. And like I've seen this friend that I've spoken about do that, and luckily then, and through the relationship I noticed her correspondence with me was lower and lower and lower, and I was like, okay, it's fine. Didn't really think much of it until obviously then they eventually broke up, and then all of a sudden she was messaging me all the time, and I was like, you do know this is normal, like this is okay, like to talk to me as a friend. I think she kind of forgot it's such an important thing to do, and without realizing it you can become so isolated, and that is what is so fearful. That's why you rely on that person so much. But we're all here, friends are here for you all the time, but not to the point where it's too much that they can't handle. So it's a give and take. That's what I think.
I think what you said as well about like realization, I think that's the hardest thing, is it does come down to that person themselves realizing the situation they're in. There's only so much you can say to someone until it ultimately comes down to self-realization that those things are actually happening to them, especially at such a young age. Like you just don't understand, and that self-realization might come with time. So yeah, I just think it's really hard to be one of those outside people that really cares for the person that is suffering, but at the end of the day they have to understand it themselves, because you like you said, I think it was highlighted before, you just don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know what's being said, you don't know how people are feeling, really and truly you don't know how people are feeling, you don't know what's going on inside people's minds. So I just think that professional help is really important to help people.
I do think though, hearing like being the outside person is difficult, especially because you're seeing someone you love go through something so horrible. But I think it's important to realise as well that can create quite a negative reaction, because that's their relationship and that's their private thing that you're not involved with, and suddenly you're trying to insert yourself into that. And especially if someone who claims to love someone so much, they're going to get defensive and they can get quite argumentative, which is upsetting to see as a friend anyway, especially when that negativity then published onto you, which is hard. So it's not always as positive as them going, oh yeah, no, this is emotional abuse and thank you so much for getting me out of this situation, because it never really goes like that. It's always much more difficult.
It's important to sort of stick with, like, obviously you have to sort of keep your friend on your side because you know that they need you, and you don't want to, like, for them to just be, oh well, you don't understand my relationship, I don't want to talk to you anymore, because you know that they need that. So it's sort of it's very difficult, but trying to find a balance between keeping them on your side but also still being there for them and looking out for them and trying to guide them towards getting the help that they need to get to realise what they need to realise.
Like when you think that someone is ignoring your advice, then again you may feel like, actually, if that person's not going to take my advice about the relationship, then I really don't want to be friends with them, and I don't think that they respect and trust my opinion. And that is not it at all. Victims of abuse are so vulnerable and fragile to the things that are happening to them, that their personalities can change, their behavior can change, and it's just really important to stick by those people who you actually think are suffering. And if you can't say something that's going to change their mind, then just be there for them and just make sure that you can be there whenever they need you. I think that's just so important.
It's also, I guess, important to bear in mind that if, like, yes, I would hope that you would be able to do that for your friends, and if you're seeing what they're going through, you'll be able to do that. But if that friendship has become very toxic and difficult for you, you don't have to stay yourself in a difficult situation, even though I think hopefully people would be able to, and that they would be able to have sort of another outlet for that if they were feeling frustrated. I don't know.
It's really difficult.
It's a difficult balance. Like you can't expect people to stay in really difficult one-sided friendships, because that's not fair to them. But at the same time, obviously those people are going through a really horrible time and they do need their friends, they do need that support. But it is difficult.
Like definitely in like a past relationship that I had, we would fight, you know, every single week, you know, multiple times, and it wouldn't just be, you know, like a little disagreement. Like this was, you know, like crying over the phone, like proper screaming at each other, like intense, really, really draining stuff. And like then you just sit for hours and then cry and like talk about it and make up. And like part of the like only once I left the relationship and stood back from it did I realize that like another thing that kept me in it was like this kind of like bond that I feel like kind of develops whenever you get past a fight, and it's like, oh, you know what, like we're actually gonna like be okay this time, and like, you know, we've been through so much, and it's kind of like this, and we always learned something more about each other, like about our past, is why we were the way we were. So it was like it then got turned into this kind of I don't know, like this really deep, you know, really nice conversation after, you know, all this shit would happen, and then, you know, a couple of days later it would all happen again.
I really agree with that. I think that's like, it's part of the sort of addiction of it as well, and like you know, you almost want to fight so that you can have those moments of like connection, and like sort of like it's that's why a lot of the time when people who have been in emotionally abusive relationships get into a healthy relationship, they might find it boring because they're like, oh, we're just happy all the time, and we're just sort of normal going about our day. There aren't these intense moments of like anger or like deep conversation kind of things, and that's a really difficult thing as well, I think, to leave that and to like try and be happy, because you can get addicted then to that sort of pain, I guess, and like that kind, because like you said, every time you fought you would then have a really intense moment together, and you then sort of spend the relationship wanting only those like intense moments, and you don't really have any like normal everyday healthy relationship moments. Like what you want is just the intensity, which is not healthy, obviously, and that's why, yeah, it can be hard. But one thing I was going to say is I think a lot of the time people talk about how abusers are charming, but I think that we can get the wrong, which they are, but I think people perceive that in the wrong way. Like they see that as something that they will be able to pick up on as like, you know, a really sort of fake, dead behind the eyes smile, you know, like a sort of classic in a film, like a serial killer kind of vibe, that kind of charming. But I think a lot of the time what is meant by that is that they're more just kind of like really nice, friendly people who everyone gets on with and everyone likes. And if you were to tell people like, oh, that person has abused me, they'd be like, oh, what? No, I can't imagine them doing that. Like they wouldn't do that.
Like they make you feel like special in certain ways. Like they'll notice like the tiniest little aspects of your appearance that have changed maybe, and like it'll make you feel like, oh, he sees me. Where I don't know, they make the other person feel like they're heard and seen, and that they're important, and that they think about them as well whenever they're not around.
I think understanding that can happen in the complete opposite as well, because obviously like Alex, was your situation, but I remember fighting for someone's attention so much because they wouldn't give me those little compliments, they wouldn't notice those little things, and me would just be like, I want that, I don't know why you can't see me. So understanding that those are polar opposite things but still emotionally abusive.
Yeah, I think as well, like it's so dangerous like getting into relationships if you've been in like a really, really like intense, like emotionally abusive relationship, because there's all different kind of like levels as to how intense it can get. But like also if you even just open up to your new partner about it, because they can very easily take, you know, advantage of like the fact that, I don't know, like that you're a bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that's very understandable to have those fears and like to struggle to trust in a new relationship. I think that's why it's so important to not jump into a relationship and make sure you've met someone that you know you really trust them and you know you really can communicate with them, and then that, you know, hopefully that trust can be built up and you don't have to. Yeah, I think like that's the thing, if someone has been in an emotionally abusive relationship, I think take some time to heal by yourself and don't expect a new relationship to heal you, because that's not going to happen. In likelihood is you're just going to project the toxic traits and stuff from your past relationship onto the new one, which is not going to be good for you or that person. So yeah, no, I think definitely sort of taking time for yourself to heal, and then making sure that you really do trust the person that you're starting a new relationship with and that you do feel safe with them. so that you don't have to have those insecurities and anxieties. So thank you so much for watching. If anything has upset you today, or you feel that maybe yourself or your friend is going through this, then please do seek professional help. Don't necessarily take everything we've said as gospel. Like, you know, this is just our opinions, this is just our experiences, so you have to fit this around your own experiences as well and what is possible for you. But yeah, just some positive parting words from Rachel, if that's all right, Rachel.
Just if you ever are in an abusive relationship, or you feel like you are, you don't know if you are, your feelings are valid. First of all, you can talk to anybody. There's people everywhere in the world. There's groups that you can get involved in on Facebook and stuff like that to talk to other women who've been through the same thing. And self-care, prioritize yourself as well.
And I just want to say as well that please remember, abuse is something that can happen to anyone, regardless of gender, and regardless of if you were in a relationship with a woman and you are a woman, that doesn't mean that she can't abuse you. If you are non-binary and you're in a relationship, like, it's nothing, well, yes, a lot of the time we focus on men abusing women in straight relationships. Everyone can be subject to abuse, everyone can be a victim, and that's very important. Yes, sir.
And it also has nothing to do with weakness. People tend to think, oh, it's because you let the person do it. It has nothing to do with that. You can be very, have a strong character, be very bold, and still be in the situation. And it has nothing to do with weakness. I think it's important to say too.
Very much. And that, I think it's hard to hear people saying that, oh, if that was me, I would leave. Why don't you just leave? And to acknowledge that it is really hard to leave, and that if you are trying to help someone leave that situation, please know that while it may seem simple to you, you aren't the one who's in it. So it is really hard to leave, and it's not this person getting themselves into that situation. They are trapped in that situation. They love this person. They may feel that this person loves them. And there's a whole multitude of reasons that people might feel the need to stay in that situation, and all you can do is do your best to be there for them, encourage them to get the help and support that they need, and just keep them safe when they do end the relationship, because I know a lot of people can be scared genuinely for their lives. So just to make sure you know what to do to stay safe and not to scare anyone, because hopefully that wouldn't happen to anyone, and hopefully you're not going to be in that situation even if someone is abusive. But it's just important to keep yourself safe above anything else, and if that means to not see that person and to cut off contact with them, then that is what you have to do. Yeah, so we've also said in this video a few things about signs of healthy relationships. That's kind of a positive note to end on, I think, is thinking about if you can find someone who you trust, you feel safe with, you can communicate with, and you like, then that's great. That's what to look out for. But as Rachel said, first things first, take care of yourself and make sure you are fully healed, or you are in a position to be in a relationship before you jump into one. Well, thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and follow our Instagram page. Bye. See you soon.